The anaerobic system is also adapted as a result of training, and this can improve performance in a game of netball where a netballer needs to work anaerobically, such as jumping to intercept the ball because it is a very short duration, however a high intensity of work that is needed, or a sprint across the court for the ball because it is both moderate intensity and duration. The main types of training that would be used to improve the netballer's anaerobic performance would be resistance training or plyometrics, because they would increase the power output because they are short duration and high intensity. This would then improve the netballer's ability to jump to intercept the ball or do a short sprint across the court. This type of training would also benefit the cardiovascular system because it would train the heart to have a higher cardiac output. This happens because it increases the heart's left ventricle wall size, which is called cardiac hypertrophy. This would then mean that the heart can pump out more blood in one contraction or one beat because it has a higher contraction force. So the stroke volume increases and more blood is sent to the muscles, transporting a greater amount of oxygen. The respiratory system also adapts as a result of resistance training because the size of the inspiratory muscles increases, so they can more powerfully inhale air to supply more oxygen to the muscles than they would have been able to do without training. Although there aren't massive benefits to the anaerobic performance from adaptation to the CV and respiratory system, because they are mainly used to transfer oxygen, and when you work anaerobically it is in the absence of oxygen, these adaptations can help to improve recovery from anaerobic exercise. After a netballer works anaerobically to intercept the ball, they then need to recover from their oxygen debt by intaking extra oxygen and they also need to remove any waste products that have been produced. Through training the respiratory system, it will enhance its ability to inhale air because the external intercostal muscles will become stronger and contract more forcefully. This means that more air and therefore oxygen will be inhaled. There will also be an increase in the amount of capillaries, so the oxygen will be able to diffuse into the blood more successfully. The adaptations to the CV system will also allow more blood carrying oxygen to be transported around the body in a shorter space of time because of the increase in the stroke volume. This means that more oxygen will be supplied to the muscles so they can pay back the debt quicker. These adaptations also allow more waste products to be removed because there's more blood available to transport them back to the lungs where they can be exhaled more frequently. All this would allow the netballer to recover more quickly, which would improve their performance because they would be able to work anaerobically, for example, jumping to intercept the ball again to the best of their ability. This graph shows how recovery can be improved because of exercise. This particular graph represents how the CV system recovers from exercise and shows how long it takes for the heart rate to return to normal. The untrained person takes a lot longer to completely recover, and after 5 minutes they are still not fully recovered. However, the trained person has nearly completely recovered to their resting heart rate after 4 minutes, and it is almost the same as it was before exercise, showing that they have a quicker and more effective recovery time. This suggests that training does have a significant impact on how long it takes someone to recover from anaerobic exercise. Another system that adapts to improve performance is the neuromuscular system. One effective training that has an effect on this system is an increase in fast glycolytic fibres. These fibres are responsible for producing high intensity, low duration contractions, which will be used for jumping to intercept the ball in netball. As a result of plyometrics training, these muscle fibres undergo hypertrophy, which means that they increase their ability to produce high intensity contractions. This would then allow the netballer to jump higher to intercept the ball, because they would have a more effective fast glycolytic muscle fibres, and therefore a more powerful contraction force, which would improve their performance. Hyperplasia is the growth of a muscle due to the increase in the amount of fibres. And this occurs as a result of anaerobic training because there is an increase in the amount of fast glycolytic muscle fibres in the muscle. Hyperplasia can occur differently in males and females. Males tend to develop muscles quicker than females because of a higher levels of testosterone they have. Testosterone is used in the process of hyperplasia, and because men have more of it, their muscles undergo hypertrophy more effectively than females. The other type of muscle fibers that undergo hypertrophy are fast oxidative glycolytic fibers. These are also used in anaerobic exercise but are responsible for moderate intensity and duration exercise. These are needed in the game of netball, where the netballer may need to sprint across the court quickly. An increase in these fibers would allow the netballer to maintain the sprint for a longer period of time at a higher intensity, so their performance would be increased. Another adaptation to the neuromuscular system because of training is an increase in the performer's tendon strength. The skeletal muscles become stronger because of training, and the tendons that connect to these muscles need to adapt to meet the demands of the muscles they work with. Tendons are made up of strong connective tissues, and training would cause the tendons to increase in density, causing them to become stronger and be able to withstand a higher amount of tension produced from the muscles. This would help the netballer avoid injury from overtension in the tendons because of an increased forces of contraction, allowing them to continue performing while producing higher levels of contraction. As a result of anaerobic training, there is also a change in neural pathways. Changes in cellular adaptations, neurotransmitters, causes an increase in the efficiency of neural pathway transmissions. As a result of neural pathways linking motor units improving, more impulses are transmitted to the muscles so they can contract more quickly in response to a stimulus, and reflex time is improved. This would improve performance because if a netballer suddenly sees the ball coming towards them, they only have a split second to respond and try to catch the ball. And if they have better reflexes, then they are more likely to catch the ball. Another adaptation of the body as a result of training is the better ability to produce large amounts of force. This occurs through a decrease in the nervous inhibition, which is responsible for the antagonist muscle contracting to prevent the agonist muscle from overworking when it undergoes levels of force it's not used to, meaning that it stops any further contraction at a high level of force. When there is a decrease in nervous inhibition, it allows the muscle to contract to a higher force without being forcibly stopped by the antagonist muscle contraction. The amount of force able to be produced by the muscles is also increased by the increased recruitment of motor units. This means that more impulses can be sent to the muscle fibers, causing more muscle fibers to contract, so there is a high level of force contraction. Not only are more motor units recruited, the ability of motor units to summate, which is the ability to fire lots of impulses into the muscles at once, is improved as a result of anaerobic training such as plyometric training, as they require maximum activation of the muscle to create a desired force. This would improve performance because when a netballer is trying to intercept the ball, they would need lots of force to jump as high as they can, and the more force they can produce, the more successful they will be in their performance. The energy systems for anaerobic exercise are the ATP system, phosphocreatine system, and the lactic acid system. Training can improve performance by making adaptations to the body so energy systems become more efficient during exercise. During the netball match, where the netballer may need to jump to intercept the ball, the ATP system would be used because the jump will only last for less than 3 seconds, so ATP doesn't run out. However, when the netballer is doing a sprint across the court, the P system would be used after the ATP runs out to resynthesize the ATP back into ATP. Then after another seconds when the PC system runs out, the lactic acid system would be used to resynthesize ATP. One way the body adapts after training to enhance performance is by increasing the enzymes needed to make the energy systems work. By increasing the amount of enzymes used for the anaerobic energy systems means that they can resynthesize ATP more quickly. The enzyme used to split phosphocreatine so it produces energy to resynthesize ATP is called creatine kinase. And if there is more of this enzyme, it means that more phosphocreatine can be broken down. and therefore more ATP can be resynthesized, allowing it to break down again to provide the muscles with the energy they need to contract. The enzymes needed in the lactic acid system are phosphorylase, which breaks glycogen down into glucose, phosphofructokinase, which breaks down glucose down into pyruvate acid, and lactate hydrogenase, which breaks pyruvate acid into lactic acid. All these enzymes are needed for the lactic acid system to work, and an increase in these enzymes means that the lactic acid system can break down more glycogen to resynthesize more ATP than it would be able to do without training. This would lead to better performance because if more ATP is being produced, then more can break down to provide the muscles with more energy, so the netballer will be able to produce a higher level of contraction without fatiguing as quickly. The main fuel source used for ATP and the PC system are ATP and phosphocreatine. By training anaerobically, it improves the muscle's ability to store phosphocreatine, so there will be a higher amount of phosphocreatine to resynthesize ATP. This means that the PC system will be able to last for longer. This would improve performance because it means that the lactic acid system wouldn't be needed until to be used as soon, reducing the amount of waste products such as lactic acid building up and causing the performer to have to stop exercise. As well as training to improve ATP and PC stores, supplements can be taken to raise the level of ATP and PC in the blood. An example of these supplements would be taking creatine, which increases the amount of phosphocreatine in the body. If a netballer took this, then they would be able to sprint for a longer time before diminishing their PC stores and running out of energy, and therefore have to stop their performance. This graph shows how the PC stores deplete after a short time of exercise. As they decrease, the power output and the ability of the muscles will also decrease. However, if there is a larger amount of phosphocreatine stores, then it would take longer for them all to diminish, because there would be more to start with, so there would be a better ability of the muscles to continue contraction. In netball, if a netballer has an increased amount of PC stores as a result of their anaerobic training, the main benefit would be the delay of the lactic acid system. This would because it would take longer for the PC stores to run out. The lactic acid system is the other anaerobic energy system that is used after the PC system, and it lasts for around 2 minutes. The lactic acid system is effective at resynthesizing ATP. However, a disadvantage of this system is the harmful waste product of lactic acid which is produced. When there is a buildup of lactic acid, it decreases the pH levels in the body, which denatures the enzymes needed for the systems to work. So ATP would no longer be resynthesized, causing the netballer to fatigue and not be able to continue. Not only this, but it would also cause a feeling of achiness in the muscles, which would be very painful and make exercise particularly hard. There are ways to reduce the amount of lactic acid in the body, and training is one of the main ways to adapt the body to deal with lactic acid better. Anaerobic training increases the buffering capacity of the body. Lactic acid buffering is where a buffer such as sodium bicarbonate decreases the acidity in the body by increasing the buffering capacity. It makes the buffer's ability to reduce the acidity in the body better, so the body can work for longer periods of time at a higher intensity without increased acidity in the body, which forces energy systems to stop producing energy and the muscles unable to continue to contract. Another way the body adapts because of training to help cope with the buildup of lactic acid is by an increased obla, which is the onset of blood lactate accumulation, and is where the body starts to fatigue because of the increased acidity in the body. Training causes obla to occur later because the enhanced buffering capacity of the body enables it to work for longer in periods of high acidity. This would improve the netballer's performance because if obla occurs later, then they wouldn't start to fatigue until later than they would have if they hadn't trained, so they would be able to continue running at a higher intensity for longer. This graph shows how much lactic acid builds up at different percentages of someone's VO2 max. When someone is untrained, they have a much lower lactic threshold, so the lactic acid builds up at a lower percentage of the VO2 max. This is presented by the red line in this graph. This means that obla will occur later. Obla always happens at 4 millimoles of lactic acid and is the point where the buildup of lactic acid causes the muscles to start to fatigue. Because in the untrained person this occurs earlier, it means that they will start to fatigue at a lower percentage of the VO2 max, so they won't be able to reach their highest level of performance. However, in the trained person, the lactate threshold is later because they have become more effective at dealing with the lactic acid through buffering. This will also mean that obla will occur at a later stage because the lactic acid doesn't start building up until they have reached a higher percentage of their VO2 max, causing them to fatigue later in their performance. This will mean that, for example, in netball, the netballer will be able to produce more power while sprinting across the court and will be able to attain a higher level of their VO2 max without fatiguing. The last system that adaptations happen in is the skeletal system. One way the skeletal system adapts due to training is by an increased bone density. An increase in bone density increases the strength of the bones, so they will be able to withstand more impact and prevent them from breaking due to this impact. This will help in netballers' performance because it will reduce their risk of injury during the game, so they can continue to play for the whole match. Bone density increases because of training due to osteoblasts migrating to the surface of the bone, which causes new cells to form on the outer layer of the bone. Also, in long bones, osteoblasts carry out ossification, which causes the fibrous tissues or cartilage to turn to bone, which increases their width, density and strength. Density is also increased by training because it suppresses osteoclasts, which destroy bone and absorb calcium. By suppressing the osteoclast activity, it causes less bone to be destroyed and less calcium to be absorbed, so more calcium stays in the bones, so the bones remain a high density. When the calcium remains in the bone, it also avoids osteoporosis, which is where the bones don't have enough calcium and become brittle. This means that the training would keep the bones from becoming brittle and less dense. Training also improves the health of the cartilage as well as the bone. It is important for a netballer's cartilage to remain in good health because it means that they can jump and put impact on the joints, because cartilage acts as a shock absorber and also protects the end of the bones from damage. Cartilage can also reduce the friction between the bones and the joints, so pain from the bones rubbing together is avoided. Training increases the collagen content in the cartilage, which makes it thicker, causing the joints to become stronger and less prone to injury. However, there are some negative effects of training on the cartilage. Repeated exercise can cause wear and tear of the cartilage in the joint and can result in osteoarthritis. This is a form of arthritis where the cartilage has worn down from exercise and makes it very painful to move. This would cause a decrease in the performance in netball because the joints would no longer be able to move as easily. Training also has a benefit to the ligaments, which can improve performance. Training can also cause an increased collagen content in the ligaments, which makes them stronger and more able to withstand high stretching forces to a greater degree, which will help prevent injuries in exercise such as joint strain.